Cache-maniacs.
GeoGearHeads.
Welcome to episode number 250 of GeoGearHeads. This makes us a quarter of a way to episode 1000. If you didn't know, GeoGearHeads is a weekly podcast about geocaching and geolocation gaming. I'm Chris of the Northwest, along with your host, Daryl W4.
And it's good to be back in the land of the living, but you know, guys, I think I'm really happy I didn't make last week's show. After some of the comments that were made there, I don't know that I should be friends with you guys anymore.
Daryl, we love you.
And of course, we also have Land Monkey joining us again with Mrs. Land Monkey. So
we do. Hello.
She doesn't get any of the blame.
No, she was not one of the bad people last week.
Yeah.
She's the nice Land Monkey.
And unfortunately, Wits End isn't here, so I can't make fun of him either. But no, it was a great show, despite all of the issues that you guys had. However, it didn't make it out to the feed until like just today. And this is Thursday. So like a week later, we finally got it around. And it all came down to FeedBurner, which we had been using to reprocess and deliver the feeds to you. Had some issues with podcast files. And then I had some other issues after they got their issues fixed. But the bottom line is we ended up, because of all the issues we've had with the FeedBurners, FeedBurners and podcasting over the years, we're just done with it. We stripped out all of the Cache-Maniac features that we used to have in the podcatcher. They're still on the website, so you can still go and download all of the old original Cache-Maniac shows. You can grab those reviews, all the cache lines, that kind of stuff. But we haven't done any of those in years. So now there's one feed at the top of the page for GeoGearHeads. Your podcatcher should automatically have updated. The directory should automatically update, so you shouldn't even have to worry about it. But if you're hearing this, we don't have to tell you. But if you're not hearing us, then you have to go and unsubscribe and resubscribe.
If you're not hearing this, here's what to do. Okay.
Right, exactly.
I kind of thought the same thing. That doesn't work as a thing.
Might be a good blog entry, maybe. I don't know.
Well, we've done the post on Patreon, and we've done a few posts to social media, and link back to the post on Patreon. So hopefully by this point everyone knows. And we've had some people who reported, well, I got last week's episode okay, but now I got the one the week before that, which I didn't get before. So yeah, it's there's been some issues with the FeedBurner feed on and off, and people have run into those now.
Well, it doesn't really matter if the shows are out of order, as long as you listen to all the GeoGearHeads episodes.
Yeah, so we're happy to now have
even last week
a more stable Libsyn feed. So the provider that's doing all the delivery of the podcast to you is now also doing the directory of the podcasts. That's basically what it comes down to. So we should not have any of these problems in the future. And if we do, we get to smack Libsyn around.
That might be fun.
I don't know about that.
No.
But at least I'll pay attention, unlike the Googles. Google's has been ignoring FeedBurner for pretty much since we signed up for it. You know, we started with FeedBurner way back when, when we started these shows almost 5 years ago. And, to me, Chris, that's what that 250 means, is we're almost done with 5 years of recording.
That's hard to imagine. It seems like it was just last year.
I know. And we're going into our 6th year of podcasting on GeoGearHeads. And both of us have been podcasting long before that, longer than Land Monkeys have been caching.
That is true. We were talking about that earlier. And it is an honor to be on a milestone episode like 250. So thank you.
Well, and this should be a really good episode, making a lot of people jealous because you guys got to do some very interesting travel caching this summer. You did the Land Sharks cruise to Alaska.
We did. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. And one of the cool things is we actually got to try trimodal vehicular caching at one point during the cruise, but we'll get to that later.
Ooh, that does sound interesting. So how many different types of transportation did you hit during this trip? Was there any air travel?
No, because fortunately for us, the cruise leaves from Vancouver, which is effectively our home city. So, well, I guess you could count driving to the cruise ship terminal as one mode.
So if we go really broad, you're only at two. You're at land and sea, but no air.
There was no air, but a variety of different forms of land travel.
Mm. Yes, and we'll get into all of that kind of stuff. Of course, you've had some great info on the blogs. You talked about it a lot on caching in the Northwest. But give us a quick rundown of what this trip was and what made it such a cool caching experience.
Sure. Well, for us, we'd never cruised before. We had lots and lots of questions about what was going to be like. What did we need to plan? How do we prepare? And the Land Sharks were really good. They actually created a Facebook group where they would answer as many questions as they could in there for the people who had signed up for the cruise. So that helped a lot. We also had some friends who had cruised before, so we asked some questions to them as well and got a sense of it. But I think in the end, we were probably more nervous about things than we needed to be for the most part.
Yeah.
But we really enjoyed it.
Yes, we did.
Yes, we did. There you go. All right.
And you guys are talking about cruising, and I'm from Detroit. So the first thing that comes to mind is, going in your car up and down the boulevard,
Yeah, not that kind of cruising.
Not that kind of cruising. This is the more relaxing, entertaining kind of cruising with hopefully a lot less action.
Yeah, of Detroit style action anyways.
Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely. But yeah. So do you want us to just sort of jump in there, Daryl?
Sure, go ahead.
All right. Well, I think one of the key things to be considering when you think, okay, I'm going to take a cruise, and whether it's, we went to Alaska, but regardless of where you're taking a cruise and planning to do some geocaching on that cruise, I think one of the key things is to plan around your ports of call. So, know what those are going to be, know the ports in advance, and do a little bit of research. Any thoughts on that? You feel free to jump in anytime so that I don't just railroad the whole thing. Okay.
Okay.
All right. One of the key things is to make sure that you've got a pocket query, at least a pocket query that'll cover every excursion and port. So don't just think about the port itself, but if you're going to do an excursion when you're at that port, make sure that the pocket query is going to cover any caches that you might want to hit when you do that as well. I would say to watch out for special or rare cache types, because often you'll be going somewhere new where there may be virtuals, earth caches, and such. If you see some puzzles that you want to try and work on ahead of time, that can be kind of cool.
Well, and one of the things I keep hearing from people who do the cruises is that you have the traveling motel room. So you get on the boat, you unload all your stuff, you set up all your chargers and everything, and you're just done. You don't have to worry about anything else. So if you go on the day-long excursions or even the overnight ones, you don't have to worry about packing everything up and, taking care of all that stuff. So that is one of the advantages to doing like caching by a cruise ship.
Absolutely. And for us, we debated about what kind of room we were going to get, if we were going to get a balcony or, a seaboard looking one. We actually, in the end, we ended up getting a completely interior room because we looked at it and said, we're pretty much going to be in the room to sleep. And so, do we really need to get one with the balcony and everything? Maybe if we were on a tropical destination, we would have thought about that a little bit more, but heading up to Alaska, and I think we're a little bit spoiled as well because we live on the West Coast. Most of the sights and scenery you're going to see while you're cruising is what we're kind of used to seeing most of the time anyway. So for us, it was kind of don't really need to get the outside room.
Sure.
Is that your whole feeling on the cruise? Is meh?
No.
No. Okay.
Now, the downside of the cruise ship for caching is there is no such thing as a park and grab.
It's a docking grab.
Well, there is a hot tub and grab for earth caches, was there not?
There was.
Yeah. So there's that.
Yeah, that's just wrong. Let's start with that. You should never be able to geocache while in a hot tub.
Well,
We did.
there you go. Mrs. Land Monkey will prove you wrong on that.
And Chris, now I'm thinking I really need to go rent one of those limos with a hot tub
Ooh.
just to go caching and prove you wrong.
And do a lamppost cache from the back of a hot tub limo. Just to
see you can.
This is not something that we want to Periscope.
And do it in January and Periscope it. Yeah.
Ooh.
Nice. Oh, that's what you and Scott should do for geocaching day.
There you go.
Oh, good Lord.
Scott,
I can see Scott.
Scott, make sure you line this up. We all want to see the Periscope. I know you're listening.
Limo for geocaching day. I love it.
Oh, geez.
Not just a limo. It's an exposed hot tub limo.
There you go. One of the other things that we did as a planning consideration is we knew we weren't far from a milestone, a geocaching milestone. So we don't often do this, but we ran up the numbers in advance so that we could hit the milestone while we were on the cruise at a particular destination. So that was kind of cool. So that's our hashtag geocache road trip milestone. We hit number 9,000?
9,000.
Number 9,000.
You have so many finds, you can't even remember what milestone you've hit.
And they've been caching half the time I have and have probably at least 20% more finds than I have.
Oh, they're animals. Well, they're monkeys.
There you go. Well, it helps that we both absolutely love doing it. So it's not like I have to sneak out and try and balance time or anything like that.
He still sneaks out.
I was going to say, he does. Yeah.
But you're a podcaster. How do you find the time?
Yeah, I don't know. How do we find the time?
That's
you can't see the rest of the house.
Yeah, there you go.
So you just have to let the house fall apart and then you can go caching. That
right.
makes sense.
Yeah.
That's the main reason they're a co-host on Caching in the Northwest, because they actually get out and geocache.
Yeah, for sure. But, talking about the earth cache from a hot tub, that's another thing to keep in mind when you're doing the planning, that not all the stops on the cruise, on any cruise, but, particularly an Alaskan cruise, not all the stops are actually going to be ashore. Some of your stops are going to be like Glacier Bay, Tracy Arm Inlet, places like that, where the ship is going to go up and stop for a while. And you need to pay attention when you're looking at those and see, hey, should my pocket query include this area? Because some of those areas have earth caches that you can observe and complete from the ship. They're actually placed with that in mind.
Yeah, and I've heard the same about like virtual caches. I seem to remember there's a virtual in the Panama Canal or something. And then a lot of the river cruises in Europe are the same way. You have a lot of earth caches and virtuals that you can usually pick if you're, not like you're going to find more than one or two a day usually, but there's enough there that you can plan for them, and you have to make sure to somehow figure out when you need to be on deck to do those.
Yes. Well, you know what? The cruise itineraries are placed every evening in your little mailbox outside your room. So it's really easy to plan once you're on the ship and to keep that going. But, talking about the numbers of caches you may or may not find, I think that brings up another good point, is when you're doing the planning and figuring out your cruise, to consider what excursions are available and balance your geocaching with seeing the highlights of the area that truly interest you. I would advise people to not have any regrets when they get back from their cruise because they missed something kind of interesting because they absolutely needed to get one more traditional. And then, it's, you might miss a really cool experience. Like we had an amazing experience at one of our more northern ports that we were at on our cruise when we went to Skagway. And I'm so glad that we didn't opt out of that. We still found a few geocaches on that, but if we had missed that just to make sure that we got all the traditionals in Skagway, we would have really missed out.
Well, you mentioned the itinerary essentially being posted on the ship, but Limax is asking if you had enough of an idea of where the cruise ship was going ahead of time so that you could go and plan your pocket queries before you got on the ship.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you want to answer that one? Or
No.
no? She's just here to look good. That's all. So yeah, they do.
Podcast eye candy.
There you go. All the cruise lines, they actually have the full itineraries of where each of the ships on each of the cruises is going to be going. So you know what all those stops are going to be. The only one that caught us off guard is we thought that our ship was supposed to be doing Glacier Bay and Tracy Arm on 2 different days. And it turned out that it didn't do Tracy Arm. And I'm not sure if that was weather related, because they do say for some of the ports, some of those, or not ports, but some of those stops that they might be doing that aren't necessarily a physical port of call, that they are weather dependent. So I'm not sure why they didn't do Tracy Arm, but we at least did Glacier Bay.
And the one area we went into, they couldn't go as far in because the seals were.
Oh yeah, that was interesting. That was in Glacier Bay.
Yeah.
In one of the fjords. They normally go a lot further up, but it's seal calving season, and so they were prohibited from going up that way, which was really, that was interesting.
Yeah.
Would have been cool to see, but then you would have been crunching seals.
So my
Once you break a
inclination,
seal, you've bought it.
You break it, you bought it.
my inclination would be to take that itinerary and try to draw out a route and do the caches, a mile on either side, and then also do the port of calls as individual spots, for pocket queries. Did you do anything more than that, or is that pretty much what you guys did?
Pretty much what we did. We were lucky again. Land Sharks do such an amazing job in preparing their cruise that they actually had a pocket query that they had already prepared. Actually, I think it was one of the reviewers who was on the cruise had prepared the pocket query in advance, and they had it posted on the website for everybody who had subscribed. So you could download that pocket query, which covered most everything. We went and did a couple of our own just for extra measure because I don't trust anybody. But we ended up with definitely had very
Present
thorough
company
coverage.
Excluded, of course.
Of course.
Now,
that
of
worked
course,
really
once
well.
you get into port, you're not going to be taking the cruise ship to go find those caches. So how did that actually work when you got into one of those ports?
Right on. So most of the ports, particularly on Alaskan cruise, these are not huge cities. So when you get ashore, you can walk to a fair number of caches. For instance, when we were in Skagway, we got off the boat and walked to an earth cache, a virtual, and a couple of traditionals in a very short walk. And I think in Juneau, there was at least one virtual, if not 2, an earth cache, and a whole metric buttload of traditionals.
I think Juneau was the largest city.
Juneau was the largest city on the cruise, yeah.
But yeah, if you're not doing we didn't do an excursion in Juneau.
Yeah, we did. That's when we went to Mendenhall Glacier.
Oh, then I'm getting my cities mixed up.
Okay.
It was our last stop.
Our last stop, we didn't do an excursion. That's right.
Is that not Juneau?
No, Juneau was the first stop.
Okay, don't listen to me. Anyways, it was a big city, or I shouldn't say big city. It was the biggest one, I guess, out of the 3. And we still walked a fair bit and were able to pick up quite a few caches in that one day. I mean, that wasn't even close to the port, but
yeah, that was a good walk. And then we had that the Rainbird Trail hike up of the city. That was nice.
There's that particular where we stopped. There was one trail where one of the other cachers who was on the trip or on the cruise decided that she wanted to hike up this one trail, and I definitely something to keep in mind is to know your ability, how long the trail is, especially, and how long it's going to take you to hike it, because she says, well, I might be cutting it kind of close to get back to the ship. And she was fairly close. I mean, she was a good hiker, and she did manage to do the whole hike and get back down. But I think when she got down, maybe about 10, 15 minutes before the ship pulls out.
Yeah, she cut it fine. And yeah, the ship doesn't wait. So it's not like a taxi or something.
So if you're not back, you have to figure out your way to get to the next port to get back on or to get yourself home. So that's one thing to keep in mind, is that depending on where you're walking to and how long your stay is in the port, if you're walking in one direction, know how long it's going to take you to turn around and head back. You don't want to miss the boat.
No, but you did mention, or tease, I should say, that one of the days you did trimodal transit to get caches.
Yeah, we did. So one of the days we had an excursion, and the excursion actually took us all the way from where do I want to say? All the way from Skagway, where we started, where the ship pulled in, into the Yukon. So we went from Alaska through British Columbia into the Yukon it was maybe a 2-hour bus ride to get all the way up there. It's just the way the Alaskan Panhandle, the province of BC, and the territory of Yukon all sort of combined there. It's actually it's an interesting route. And it's actually also where what's that path called? The trail, the Chilkoot Trail. It's where the Chilkoot Trail goes through. So, in the Alaskan Yukon gold rush of the late 1800s, that was the route that the prospectors would take, was that same route to get into the Yukon, where apparently the gold was. So that was cool. So we bussed up into the Yukon, actually went to a town called Carcross. And then in Carcross, we met up with a train. The train's basically just a tourist train now, but it used to run supplies from Skagway to Whitehorse, the capital city of the Yukon Territory, back and forth. And so the train now only goes about part way. It goes to the Yukon town of Carcross, then back through Bennett, British Columbia, and back down to Skagway. So we took the train back down. So cruise ship, bus, train.
And 2 different countries.
And 2 different countries, and 1 state, 1 territory, 1 province.
Wow.
It was a lot of fun.
Now, when you got off the bus, you
Yes.
had enough time to find a geocache or 2 to be able to claim the province, correct?
So the timing was tight. In fact, and we were lucky because the bus was basically entirely filled with the geocachers from our cruise. There was 52, 54.
Yeah, but there was we didn't all take the.
No, but the bus was full with like everybody from the cruise who was a geocacher. And so we were able to, as a group, sweet talk the bus driver, and he was a good sport anyways. But he drove us past the town of Carcross to the Carcross Desert, where there's an earth cache, then buzzed the bus a little bit further up to Emerald Lake, where there's another earth cache. So we got 2 earth caches as a group, then swooped back down into Carcross. And there wasn't much time. I think 1 or 2 people ran around and tried to grab a couple of traditionals, but there wasn't a lot of time before it was all aboard. But we did manage to nab an earth cache by train on the way back down.
Yeah, which you can only get if you ride the train.
Right.
So you've got an earth cache by boat, an earth cache by bus, and an earth cache by train on this trip.
Yes.
And you would have laughed at the earth cache by bus, because we had literally kind of hoped to, sweet talk the guy into going up to the smallest desert in Carcross. And he's like, well, and we didn't get a lot of time. And, it was the quick honk, get back on the bus. And he goes, well, if you want, I can take you 2 more minutes up the road to Emerald Lake to get the earth cache there. And so again, that was the make sure you might have a little bit further out than what you think you're going to have on your pocket query. And at least, because I don't think all of us had what the questions would be, thinking we weren't going to make it there.
Yeah.
But I know that the bus pulled in, and I think we designated one person to hop out and take pictures of the
lake and the signage.
The lake and the signs. And then, of course, you know, well, it's not mandatory anymore, but to take a picture of yourself. So one person took a picture of all of us sitting in the bus, all holding our GPSs up the best we could. But anyways, we're able to kind of do a very quick Earth cache that way by bus, which was interesting.
It was cool.
Which is
I'm really glad.
advantages of caching with a group of people like that is you can kind of, you know, divide and conquer. But it sounds like this wasn't necessarily part of the Land Sharks organized trip. This was something as an option.
Those extra 2 Earth caches. Well, the hope was, and they set the expectation that, hey guys, we may not be able to get to those extra 2 Earth caches, but we'll definitely get the one by train on the way back. So the fact that we were able to get them was a bonus. So yeah, it's that this your mileage may vary by your bus driver.
But the side trip was part of the Land Sharks trip then?
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, yes, but let's just explain that when we booked the cruise with them, yes, you are part of their geocaching kind of group and went through them, but that just paid for your cruise. When it came down to the excursions, they said these are the excursions, which was 1 in each port. This is what we are doing. It doesn't mean you have to, you know, if you can't afford it, you don't want to, you want to do something else. There was nothing to say you have to do these excursions with us. So that's why I say on the last day, we didn't do the excursion that they had chosen to do. Jay and I decided, you know what, I think we would like a day to just wander around by ourselves. I mean, and it's not that.
That was in Ketchikan.
Yes.
Last time.
Okay. Thank you. I can't remember. But even though there was 52 of us that had all gone on this cruising trip together, we did not go around from cache to cache as 52 people. It was quite split up. So I think sometimes there may have been 7 or 8 of us. Sometimes it was just Jay and I. Sometimes we'd bump into 1 or 2 other people. But there was nothing that said you have to be together with us and do these excursions. Yeah. It was still your cruise to do what you wanted.
It was, and I would add that to Laura's point, when we did the that trip to Carcross with the train and the bus and etc., there was a smaller group that said, you know what, we're not going to do that excursion. What they did is in Skagway, they rented a car and they drove all the way to Whitehorse, which isn't that much further really, but they drove up to Whitehorse and found a bunch more Earth caches. And I think the oldest traditional in the Yukon, I can't remember. There was a bunch of special caches that they had targeted, and they did a full day of doing that, and then met everybody back at the boat later. So you can kind of do whatever you want. But to Laura's point, the good folks at the Land Sharks had said, well, hey guys, these are the ones we're going to do. We'd love to have you join us, but if you want to do your own thing, hey, go for it.
So the days when you're actually at sea, being a caching cruise, was this like all like workshops and stuff like that during the downtime when you're sitting on the boat, or since it was a geocaching cruise?
So it wasn't a geocaching cruise; it was just a cruise. But there was a group of geocachers who got together on the cruise, which then did give us the opportunity a couple times to get together as a group of geocachers. Like on the last sea day on the way home, we had booked a room on the ship, and everybody got together and we all reviewed our Earth cache answers as a group. I went through all of them together just to make sure everybody who had done them, everybody who was there for them, had a fair opportunity to say, oh, I didn't observe it that way, I thought, which was actually kind of cool. That was fun.
See, and I was getting this impression that this is like those photography cruises that you see now, where there's a whole bunch of them on like tech subjects as well, where you spend the 4, 6, 8 hours, whatever, of the days that you're at sea, going over training and that kind of stuff. So it's like,
No.
Yeah. Which you could
Con on the ocean.
Which they did have stuff like that. I mean, there was actually the land sharks themselves one day hosted a 2 hour seminar on how to take better photographs when you're traveling. And that was really great because Chris from the land sharks is a fantastic photographer. So he gave a lot of tips. But yeah, there's all kinds of shipboard activities. Like the cruise ships, they have enough stuff going on to keep you busy flat out. In fact, there's more than enough stuff. So you have to kind of pick and choose what you're really interested in. I really enjoyed the Scotch tasting one evening, but they also have wine tasting. They have tech classes. They have briefings every day on what's going on at the next port of call the next day. So, you know, when we get to this port of call, here's some of the highlights. Here's some of the things to go see. They had, before we went into Glacier Bay, they actually had the rangers from Glacier Bay Park come on the ship and do some presentations about the area and the wildlife in the area, which was really neat. Yeah, I think I said they have tech classes. Like every day they had a different kind of Windows 10 class and
I don't remember that.
things. I remember seeing that on there and I was like, whatever. But it's neat. I mean, there's so much to do on those ships. You can keep busy. One of the fun things we did was every night there was an informal cashier's meet and greet at the bar at the back of the ship. So you could choose if you wanted to join that or not. And there'd be, you know, different people there each night and sort of hang out and just talk about the day and, you know, maybe plan out, oh, yeah, I was going to do this cache, this next port of call. Anybody want to join me for that? That's kind of neat. I mean, they're not official geocaching events because it's really hard to get those coordinates to stay put on the cruise ship. But it was fun. It was a great way to get to know your fellow cachers on the ship a little better and have a lot of fun. And on the sea days, you were talking about the sea days. We actually spent a lot of time on the sea days in an area called the Crow's Nest, which is kind of like a coffee shop / library up on the top floor of the boat. That was pretty neat, eh?
Yeah.
And how did you spend your time when we were up there?
I read a book, something I haven't done for years. But I did
What
not
an
realize
odd thing to do in the library.
I didn't. Well,
with
a
a wrench.
had a library there, but they actually had a library, and it was like, oh. So I signed a book out on the first day, and I managed to finish it just before the last day, which is good. But yeah,
Excellent timing.
It was nice for, especially we did have, I think, one or two of the sea days where it was kind of socked in the morning, so it's not like you could see too much of the scenery. So it was just nice to kind of kick back and.
You didn't sit out in your bathing suit on a deck chair and enjoy the view?
I'd have to be back in the hot tub again. You know, when we were in Glacier Bay, the weather turned out really well. That was nice. Yeah. There'll be pictures. There'll be pictures posted in the upcoming blog posts. I'll have to admit, you know, we always joke around about how some Americans, you know, when they think of Canada, where as soon as you cross the border, it's snow.
Snow and maple syrup. What else is there?
I'll have to admit that heading up to Alaska, I expect, even though we're going in the summer, I kind of expected to see still a little bit more snow. And it wasn't. It's a lot like home. It really was. In fact, one of the trails we hiked on, I said, I feel like we're just hiking on the North Shore at home. Although some of the there's a lot more older growth. Yeah, I was going to say the forest was a little bit different, but at the same time, it did really kind of make us feel like we were hiking a little bit of being at home. Anyways. Yeah.
So you just had to change the latitude a little more.
Yeah. There you go.
And a bit in the longitude, but not much.
Yep.
Well, what did you guys actually end up taking with you on the cruise?
You wanna lead that one off?
Well, I know you've got lots of stuff.
I got notes for you.
Well, what do you mean? Like, what we took with us, like technology wise or clothes wise, or
Well, some of both. How did you plan for what kind of clothes and what tech goes with you? And of course, the question at the end is, what did you do right and what did you do wrong?
Tell you what, you handle the clothes, I'll handle the tech.
yeah, okay, that works. Well, clothes wise, I think before we left, I know we kept checking the weather every so often just to see, okay, what kind of temperature are we talking about? And that, I think, is a big role to play in knowing what you're taking with you. And of course, for a week, you can kind of see what weather comes in. But basically, we did take clothes enough to layer up. It's still Alaska, even though it's the summer, it does get a little chilly. I don't think we ended up taking boots or anything, but hiking shoes, hiking socks, which are a little bit warmer. Just a little bit of extra stuff. I'm not really explaining that well, but that's just for being outdoors. I can't remember if I'm trying to remember if I actually took like a separate jacket, but I mean, you have your fleece, of course, and you can pull an extra jacket on top. But for the cruise itself, they do have fancy dinners, and I think most people know that. So yeah, we had
black dress, and Jay brought a tux.
Yeah, well, they apparently have
T-shirt.
relaxed a
Monkey
little
suit.
bit, that they're not as much of the has to be a tux, but he definitely brought a suit, and that was fine. I guess if you don't, I mean, you can still eat at the buffet.
With the peasants.
It's still good food.
It is actually. Yeah, that's awesome. And yeah,
What-
so the
Was
buffet is
there
way
a
more
dress code
casual.
for dinners?
Not at the buffet. Well, other than you there is a dress code in the buffet that you have, it's sort of the no shirt, no shoes, no service kind of thing. But it's pretty casual. But if you wanted to go to the upscale restaurants on the boat, there was a dress code.
And that came on your itinerary. It would let you know that tonight is a formal night, or the next night is casual. So you would know ahead of time. So you could plan that. I think that was also something, we didn't have a scheduled time to go to those restaurants, whereas I think some people who were on the trip, because they had signed up early, they actually had a scheduled time to eat at those restaurants for their dinners. And sometimes it was earlier than when you needed to be back at the boat. So you had to choose whether or not you wanted to be back early enough to eat, or whether or not you just wanted to stay out more and just eat at the buffet later. It was your choice. But
I think in the chat room, Limax is asking if there's podcaster dinners, because he wants to know about no pants.
Yes. So no, there were no podcaster dinners, but I think you can do breakfast and lunch in no pants as long as you have shorts.
Though I'm not sure that would be much more comfortable in Alaska.
Honestly, there was a couple
on
of
the ship.
days. Yeah, on the ship, there was a couple of days where I think I did go out in shorts.
yeah.
So it's really just like kind of northern BC in the summer.
Our last day, of course, I kept saying was Juneau, but it was Ketchikan. That was the day that we did the hike.
It was hot that day.
And it was hot, and it was quite interesting, because when we got back to the cruise, or the cruise ship, there were other people who had talked with some of the locals, and they went, wow, this is very unusual. We don't have days like this. And apparently it rains there quite often. So I don't know.
They had nice weather for
nice weather.
us.
But on
I said, the land monkeys are coming.
Yeah, of course. They
Oh,
have
I
to
was
plan
gonna-
good weather.
I was going to say the land sharks probably scheduled that.
Yeah,
It's
they
all the
did.
famous Canadians that were stopping by. But on a serious note, I'm joking about the shorts on the deck of the ship, but I would imagine, even though you're well above the water, that once you're out at sea, it is going to be quite chilly on the deck, in that very, very, very cold water.
Yeah, there's definitely, especially when we pull into Glacier Bay, the ambient temperature when the boat is moving was cool. What was interesting is once the boat stopped in Glacier Bay near that Marjorie Glacier, when it was stopped and it sort of just let the current spin it a little bit, we were probably only about 200-300 meters away from the face of the glacier. That was pretty amazing. And it calved while we were there, which was super cool. And if anybody doesn't know what that is, that's when the glacier chunks of it fall off, and it's literally like somebody's firing a shotgun. It is so loud when those things break off and then they hit the water, and it's just spectacular. So that was really lucky that we were able to see that. But when the boat was still, that's when you guys were in the hot tub at Marjorie Glacier. It was quite warm. I had my toque on and my jacket on because when the boat was moving earlier, it was quite chilly. And then I had to, lose some layers.
And the sun came out, and then it was, it's so hot.
Yeah. So clothing wise, but Daryl, do you want me to jump into the tech topic or?
Well, before we do that, Shermanator 18 was asking, is it hot in Alaska? And during the summer, my understanding is it does get quite warm.
Yeah, it can. It depends where you are, right? Like if you're out in the far northern parts of Alaska, it's not. But most of the very popular cruise ship destinations in Alaska are pretty reasonably temperate. I would say if you're planning to go there in the summer, to really just sort of plan like spring or fall style caching clothes that you would wear, down here in this area. So, light pants, sturdy shoes. And
it does depend a lot
layers.
on the destination because Alaska's a big place.
It is. It really is. Yeah.
So let's get into the tech stuff now.
Sure. Well, I think the number one thing I would make sure people know is assume that there's going to be no internet once you leave home. So, on your GPSR, your smartphone, bring a laptop if you can. I brought my Microsoft Surface Pro, which is super awesome, and I love that. So that worked well. But download and save all your PQs and all your maps that you're going to want.
You're not getting paid for the plug.
Is Microsoft not sponsoring me still? Jeez. All right. Next email. All right. So assume that you're not going to have any internet. And in some of the ports of calls, you can get internet in some of the spots, your free Wi-Fi. Exactly. But not all of them. So it's something you got to plan for. So just assume none and then work from there. Being a blogger and vlogger, for me, it was really important to make sure I brought an external drive. So I actually brought two external drives with me to make sure that I had backups of everything. And as Daryl mentioned earlier, you charge up those batteries every night because you're going to have a full day, and you know that you'll be back in your moving hotel room, and you just have all your chargers all set up. Bring a power bar. I bring a power bar, and then I have all my chargers all set up and plugged into that, and all the cables. And every night, boop, 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 plug everything in. In the morning, good to go.
And he does that.
I do that every morning. Are we good to go? We're good to go.
Limax also wants to know if paper maps actually function in Alaska.
Yes, they do, as long as they don't get really wet.
Well, it depends on, I guess, what they're printed on.
Yeah, it does.
Maps.
Depends on what the function is, but yeah. Yeah, definitely, of course.
Yeah, and you have to, I guess, have maps of Alaska for them to work in Alaska.
That helps.
No, the maps work anywhere.
Well, I don't
you
think
can get maps of Greece. They work.
I don't
fine
think
in
your
Alaska.
Australian maps would work very well in Alaska.
Turn them upside down.
Yes, for the purpose of navigating where you are, no, they wouldn't. Oh dear. But yeah, so yeah, those are kind of I think from a tech perspective, some of the key things I would tell people to plan for. From a sort of a lower tech perspective, you need to also consider that you may not necessarily be able to bring some of your tools of the trade with you. Now, as many geocachers do, I have a vest that has all kinds of great stuff in it, including my big Bear Grylls hunting knife and a bunch of other stuff that I carry around with me when I do my local caching and when we hit the backcountry and such. But you can't take that stuff on the ship. They have metal detectors and X-ray when you're coming back on the ship from the different ports of call, and when you go to first board the ship as well.
Yeah.
So even if you manage to smuggle it in your main luggage, if you're taking a big knife or something like that with you, I don't know why on earth you would need to do that on a cruise, but okay.
To cut those really thick steaks.
Yeah, there you go. If you take it with you, you can take it off the ship, no problem. But as soon as you go to come back on the ship, there's going to be a problem. So that's maybe just sort of a little piece of advice.
All right. So before we wrap this up,
Yep.
What went right and what went wrong of all of the stuff that you brought with you?
The best thing I brought with me was Mrs. Land Monkey. That went right.
That's a very important tool, is to have, someone to, back you up. And I imagine she was especially handy in those bar fights that you were talking about at the back of the ship.
That's right. Yeah, she was.
I missed one of them.
She always had my back.
I actually wasn't feeling that great on the night he was doing the Scotch tasting with a few of the others.
I was feeling great.
So I went back to our room and read a book. And at one point I thought, wow, I thought this ended quite some time ago. So I actually left to go find them. Oh, and I found them, and some of them were quite happy.
Yeah.
Need I say more?
I think that's about enough.
No, say more, please.
So yeah, what went right? Definitely, the tech went right. We had the smartphone as a backup, and that worked. We actually needed that one time. So that was good to have that with the pocket queries and such downloaded, and the maps for offline caching. So that was smart, and it worked. So we were really pleased with ourselves about that. What went wrong?
Did you feel your pocket queries were expansive enough to cover the areas you went to?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah, and we were pretty thorough with those.
I mean, it's not like, and most of the ports, because because we went on some tours and did some sightseeing, it's not like we were in one of the cities and are racing around trying to find all of them. I think in Ketchikan, because we didn't take an excursion, we had time to walk around and get more. But the other ports, it wasn't really a thing of how many can we get. It was just, we'd like to see what we can see, and oh, hey, there's one right there, let's grab it while we're here.
Yeah.
But
I got a couple things for the what went wrong, and maybe not wrong's a strong word, but things we maybe could have done better. One of them was we booked a little on the later side, not super late, but we missed some of the early booking benefits that you could get. So if you're thinking about doing a cruise, you got to kind of watch that, because every cruise line is slightly different. But for ours, there was a deal where if you booked by a certain date, all your beverages were free for the cruise. We missed that, but we still managed to get a bit of a discount on some of our beverages. But that can be really expensive.
Yeah, I think that equated to was that you could have 8 drinks a day. And most people were like, yeah, I'm not even coming close to that. And it wasn't a point of, okay, I'm going to make sure I drink 8 drinks a day. That some of that included your, I think your pop.
Yeah. Anything that you don't get in the restaurant or the buffet. So if you go up to the coffee shop that we were talking about before, you have to pay for all the drinks up there. Your coffees, your teas, everything. So it all adds up, and they're not discount rates. That's for sure.
No. And one thing, if you've never been on a cruise before, one of the things that is kind of handy but could be dangerous is that you don't have to have your cash to pay for everything while you're on the ship. You basically get your bill at the end that says this is how much you owe. So that's why I say it could be kind of dangerous, because in order to get off the
ship, you have to pay this much.
Pretty much.
But so if we had wine, I think, in the restaurant. And of course, that was on our bill at the end because we didn't have that card. And, at first we were thinking, well, would we really use it? And you have the option of buying, I think, a drink card at the beginning, but we felt we wouldn't actually spend that kind of money in one day.
Yeah, well, because we had that one, the lesser of the two packages, it still covered most of the drinks. We only had to pay, a little bit of cash at the end.
But if you can get the freebie drink card, I would suggest going for it.
Yeah, so it's worthwhile. So, things we could have done better. That was one of them. The other was one of the nights I actually forgot to plug in the cameras and ran out of battery partway through one of the days. So again, important to remember to charge all those electronics up every night because, man, there's just so much to see and do, and you never know when you're going to come across something super cool. Like when we were in Juneau and we went out to Mendenhall Glacier, there was a bear, a black bear with her two cubs, and she was fishing salmon out of the creek right there within a couple of meters of where you're standing. So, I mean, stuff like that you don't get to see every day. That was pretty amazing.
Very cool. And it is very important when you're at the room charging everything up to make sure all sides of, all ends of all cables are connected to where they need to be.
And I think that's actually what happened is I plugged something in and I thought the cable was plugged into the power bar and it wasn't. And in the morning I was like, ruh-roh.
Yeah, well, we have that problem here all the time now is we've got some of those cables in like the living room, to top off your phone that have gotten a little loose, and all it takes is someone to pull a little bit too hard and it's disconnected from the charger, which of course is like under the sofa.
Yeah.
I think the only other thing we didn't mention about taking with you, I mean, I don't think we ended up using it with gravel for seasickness. Since we had never been on a cruise, we weren't sure how it was going to affect us. But I think there was maybe one part of the trip where it was a little bit more in the open.
Oh, north of the Queen Charlotte's. Yeah.
In the open waters instead of being inside the channel there. And I could feel it rocking a little bit, not enough to make me feel so nauseous or anything, but I know that they had talked about other cruises, and I thought, you're not really in a channel, you're in a much more area or a larger area of open water. And I kind of tried to ask, does the boat rock, more? Yeah,
don't be knocking.
But just wondered if the boat moved a lot more. And I didn't really kind of get a great answer, but I just thought for people out there who maybe went on maybe a Caribbean cruise where, it is kind of more open water and they hated it because they felt awful. I don't know whether or not an Alaskan cruise or even those river boats that they have in Europe that are in the smaller channels, that maybe they would enjoy it more because it's not as much in the open water and less movement.
Yeah.
But something to think about anyways.
Yeah. So, go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say, were you generally satisfied with the selections of clothes you took? Did you feel like you needed more or that you felt like you took too much?
No, it was pretty good. I think we had about the right amount, and they do have laundry services. So even if you want to sort of trim down the amount of clothes you take, you could do that. But again, the thing is that you've got this mobile hotel room. So really you can bring as much as you want. And we were amazed at how much innovative storage space they had in the rooms.
Tuck there. I think I brought more clothes than what I really needed, but at least on the sea days, you're so close to your room that, if you're too hot, too cold, you could.
It was nice to have the options.
You could easily switch up, and it wasn't an issue. So,
great question.
And of course, you mentioned earlier that you got more blog posts coming, but there's already some good stuff up there, and we'll link to that in the show notes. But it's landmonkeys.blogspot.ca.
Singular, land monkey.
Land monkey. Sorry, yes, I said plural. I'm in plural mode tonight.
So yeah, landmonkey.blogspot.ca or .com. Either of those work. But Yeah, and we've got stories and photos from the cruise and the shore excursions. So far, we're up to day 4 of the 7 days. So there's at least a couple more posts to come.
All right, and you also have a weird bear contest thing going on that I heard on, caching in the Northwest. So let's and you mentioned it last week on this show. So let's plug it one more time.
Sure. Thanks, Daryl. I appreciate that. So here, I'm going to pan the camera over here just for a moment. We have a new member of our studio here, as you can see. And this fine fellow, he does not have a name yet. So there is a bear on, because this works so well on audio, there is a bear on the wall in my studio who doesn't have a name. And we really want help from all the creative and fun people in the geocaching community to send us some ideas for what would you name the bear through the month of October. So at the end of the month of October, we're gonna decide on whether Mrs. Land Monkey likes any of the names, and award the prize to the winner. We have, thanks to World Caching, has given us to give away a 2016 geocaching Lackey coin, which is a super cool coin. It looks like a pocket watch. It's really neat. All you have to do is send a tweet, hashtag who's the bear. That's right. Hashtag who's the bear. Send that to @LandMonkeyGC along with your idea for a name for our bear here. And it is a male bear. We'll give you that much to work with. And
He delivers postal.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. So yeah, thanks, Daryl.
I assume the bear is not eligible.
Dave? No, he's totally eligible.
The name the bear.
I think we already have that. I think somebody's already sent that in.
Because it's just too obvious. But that's not
some
the
creative
hashtag.
ones.
It's not who's the bear, it's who's the bear.
The bear. That's right, yes.
Very, very important distinction, because if it's who's the bear, well, you might get some different answers.
Well, and that's a good point, because if you don't put the hashtag who's the bear in, then I'm probably going to miss your entry when I compile them all, and you won't get a chance to win. And not only do we have the coin, I gotta throw this in because Shermanator is going to want to hear about this, or at least hear about it again. We have these super cool Land Monkey geocaching pens that work really good on dry logs. So we'll be giving a couple of those away as well.
You can use them for all your virtual and earth caching needs as well.
Exactly. They work excellent for earth caches.
So with that, we're going to wrap it up. Thanks again for joining us and sharing these wonderful experiences.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to once again be on the show on a milestone, number 250.
With fewer technical difficulties.
Much fewer.
As it just abruptly ends. But Chris, catch us up on what's coming up before that happens.
Well, we're not ending the series at episode 250. Next week, episode 251, we're talking GPSR picking with Limax. That's choosing your new GPSR. On October 27th, that's your virtual caching bag. November 3rd, we're doing another randomize. This is a randomize Lee episode. You'll get it eventually. Catch up with that. And November 10th, we're doing another episode on getting good cords.
So check the Cachemaniacs website at cachemaniacs.com for more on the GeoGearHeads, including show notes for this and all of our episodes. We love hearing from our listeners, so leave us feedback by emailing geogearheads@cachemaniacs.com or through social media. Your support helps keep the Cachemaniacs shows coming. Please consider becoming a patron through the link on our website to support the Cachemaniacs shows. GeoGearHeads is produced by Christoph Nauer and Daryl Wanberg. This show is copyright 2016 by Daryl Wanberg. All rights reserved.
Cash with a Cachemaniacs.